all the portions are out in production, and basically we're wanting to start user testing. But there may still be a few bugs in it. That's what we're trying to work out with some of the introductory user testing. So, you know, if you see anything, just screen capture it and forward it to me. I also plan to, we're wanting to do kind of a materials shade tree type thing around the state. So I'm planning on traveling to each district, spending a day, as well as reaching out to the individual plants. And if I need to do some more on-site training for LaPave, we can schedule that, as well as on-site at plants. So I don't have a set schedule for that. I'm probably going to come up with that here in the next week or so. Probably start doing it before Christmas. Some of it's probably going to be after the New Year, though. And I also have Keith Beard at LTRC is working on some micro tutorial videos. And what we're hoping to do is basically just capture small pieces. So if there's a piece that, you know, how do I do this? Hopefully we just have a, you know, like a 1-2 minute video on quickly how to do that, instead of having to watch through an hour-long video just to see the one little portion you're trying to figure out. So we're also working on user manuals and several other training tools and introductory tools. We're not just turning this on and say everyone use it. We're wanting to kind of slowly implement, let people get accustomed to it, let people get familiar with it. I know a couple of you have already been in there clicking around, testing things, trying to break it, which is good. And as we progress and people get more and more comfortable with it, you know, when your district is comfortable using it, then we'll start, you know, essentially putting it into policy and setting it up where this will become the mainstream way for submitting mix designs and managing asphalt throughout the state. So today we're doing just the asphalt modules. The concrete module is still under development. We're hoping to have that out here in the next couple months or so. And we're also looking at a bunch of other bells and whistles to put on, other things to supplement site manager materials. And over the next year, we're just going to slowly be rolling out kind of a transition from handling things pen and paper and site manager materials to a more mainstream, cleaner interface, more pipeline way of managing materials throughout the state. All right, so I did click record, so this one's being recorded. We'll have it posted afterwards. Excuse me. And I do have a little bit of the sniffles this morning, so forgive me. But to start, a few of you may have seen the new links here on the intranet page. Also the sample barcode generator that I see a lot of people have been using. We did get in the new barcode scanners yesterday, and they're more sensitive. So I know a few of the barcode scanners have been having problems reading the barcodes that have been generated from the web interface. This new one should be a little more sensitive to that, and it also reads QR codes, which are the square. Let me pull one up real quick. And pop-up blockers, get one. Right, barcodes in this format. That's called a QR code. I'm sure everyone's seen it, just may not be as familiar with it. But these are a lot easier and easier for the scanner to pick up. You can have like 30% of it covered and it'll still read. You can bend it and have it distorted and the scanner will still be able to read it. So there's a lot of advantages of moving to this type of QR code. So as I come around to the different districts, I'll also be bringing you a new barcode scanner and we'll get all that set up. All right.
Now I need to ask about the ink printer.
So starting off with LaPave Online. Actually, I think it says it. All right, so what I'm going to do is actually impersonate Kevin Barbier from O2. And this will be your typical screen for a DOTD user. To start off, you have a dashboard. And on this dashboard, you'll see different types of messages in the message queue. Any type of requests, approvals, things like that will be shown in your message queue. Onto the dashboard, you have a profile. And this profile pulls from Site Manager. So all of your security is based on Site Manager. So if you're a DLE in Site Manager, you'll be a DLE in LaPave. If you're a District Lab Supervisor, you'll still be a Supervisor in LaPave. If you just have tech status, it'll be a tech status in LaPave. And the different options there represent the different levels of security you have in LaPave Online as well. Down below that, you'll see the plant list that you have available. For those of you that are not assigned a district and site manager, you're going to see every plant in the state. If you are assigned a district, you'll see just the plants that you're assigned to. And there's active plants and active contracts. This is where users request access to plants. Now, as a DOT person, you're pretty much going to have access to all the plants in your district. However, if you need to be set up as a plant user for a particular plant, you can either request access here, or DLEs have access to specify certain plants and grant access for users to a plant. So the system is set up where the majority of the plant entry and the mix design development and mix design creation, all that's going to be on the actual plant users. So if a DOT person needs to enter all that, they'll need to be set up as a plant user for a particular plant. So you see in this case, we're looking at Barrier in New Orleans, or in Booty, excuse me. And you have the plant users are the top three here, but Kevin's actually set himself up as a plant user for this plant, so he can go in and enter mix designs for this plant. So starting out, a lot of the DOT users will probably set themselves up as plant users to enter this until the industry gets more comfortable doing everything on their own. And as we migrate to that, you'll essentially see the industry take over a lot of the actual entry and input for the mix designs, and the DOT portion will just be approvals and checks. All right, so moving on. Well, actually, let me do this. I'm going to add Kevin to this Bow Brothers plant is no longer active, so, oh, Kevin's already on there. Okay, good. That's a plant type. So the next tab at the top will be the Asphalt tab. And under the Asphalt tab, they have a material selection sub-tab. And the material selection is where the plant will enter all of the materials that are available at their plant. So if I look at the New Orleans plant I had set up, you can see that they have a Valero binder, they have an ergon binder, they have several aggregates entered and an anti-strip entered. Now, plant users are able to add material. And we'll just put in a new asphalt binder. Now, when you go to add material, this pop-up will show you every material that is available in Site Manager that's active. So anything on the AML will show up in these drop-downs. Now, the custom identifier is a user-entered field. That's just an identifier local to the plant. They may call it a certain stockpile number. They may call it a certain material. It's basically just a local identifier, so that they don't have to reference everything by the producer supplier number, material code, things like that. But this custom identifier will have all the information saved with it. So anytime you reference the custom identifier, all this other information will come with it. For aggregates, aggregates allow you to enter the stockpile information. Now, if I'm a plant user, I'm only going to see the plant column. If I'm a DOT user, I'm only going to see the DOT column. But in this case, Kevin, for this plant, it has both DOT access and plant access. So you see, he can see both columns. So if I was to swap to I'll swap to a different user here in a sec and show you. Let's see. So when this pulls up, this is not so much important for asphalt as it is for concrete, but these values out here in the green, these are actually the values pulled from the active AML listing. So anytime it gets updated, you'll see these values out here change. We're also setting up email notifications with the other applications where when these values get changed, you'll be notified. And I'm going to look at a way to pull any mix designs that are using these particular materials when they get updated to send you a list, things like that. So the DOTD column will not be available or will not be visible to the plant users unless the DOT person checks the complete option. If they check complete, then it will be visible to the plant users, but they will not be able to input anything. So it'll be locked for them, but they'll be able to view it. Now, I know that there's a few districts that never release their values to the plant. If that's the case, don't ever check complete. Simple as that. So does everyone understand this is kind of the stockpile management portion for what's available at the plant?
Yes.
Got it? All right. We also have a column for the Asphalt Technology Lab, so the two guys here. If you log in with your status, you actually see a third column out here for y'all to input, where if you need to do any verifications on stockpiles. And as we progress, we're going to have reports available to show the verification differences and things like that between the DOT measurement and the plant measurement, things like that. But any values that are input in the plant column, when you go to create a mix design, those will be automatically transferred over to the mix design. All right, so that's under material selection, and basically this list will be everything that's available at the plant. I do know that John Victory, while he was there when he was on the Boutique plant, you see he filled out his complete list of everything that's available at their plant, and you see the custom name that he assigned to each one of the different stockpiles.
Patrick, how do we do it as we rerun Gravities? All we do is update it?
Yes, all you do is update it. Any value that's currently in a mix design will remain in the existing mix design. However, we are looking at ways to, if we need to re-up the mix design, we'll have a way to clone the mix design and import the new values, where essentially it'll expire the existing, but have a new one take its place.
Okay, and I saw DOTD, the plant. What happens if we're not within tolerance and we have to run one that we, together?
If you run one together, I would put it in the plant column, because essentially that's what's going to be used for the mix designs, correct?
Yeah, but I don't want him deviating from it at all.
Right. I mean, I could put indicators on that show the last time it was updated and the person that input it, because all that gets tracked. Anytime a new value gets entered, the old ones are actually still maintained in the database. So I can pull up a history of the values and who input those particular values, if that's what you need.
You just could put the same number in both, on both the DOTD and the plant, and have the number.
That'll work.
That works too.
Yep.
Okay. And like I said, as we go through, this was built from scratch. So any reporting, any additional checks, any flags, anything like that you can think of, let us know. And like I said, we're looking at ways to essentially build this system to help you pipeline, help you quickly, essentially assist you with your job. I mean, we're trying to build a tool to best accommodate how you do your job for managing mix designs. So this covers for the stockpile info. So moving into mix designs, you'll see the next sub-tab under Asphalt is the Mix Design Manager. And at the top of these, you'll see every plant that I have access to. Now, if I swap to Now, one thing you'll notice as an admin, I have access to an admin tab, and we built this nice little impersonate feature so that when you call me and say, I only see this on the screen, I can now impersonate you and see exactly what you see on the screen. So you see logging in as John Victory, he's only set up for these 3 plants. So these are the only 3 plants he sees. And when he goes in, you see he only sees the plant column. So you can tell that depending on your user security will govern what you see, what you have access to, and later on it'll be what you can input or what's view only, things like that. So when he goes to Mix Design Manager, again, you see he only has access to these 3 plants. Any mix design that is existing under the plant will be shown in a list here. You can see when I flip between them, it basically lists everything that's available under that plant. One thing that we tried to show, if you look up at the top, you'll typically see what plant you're on. If you're in a mix design, you'll see what mix design you're on. And when I flip between values, it tends to hold the last plant that I was on, or the last mix design I was on, or when I get into production, the last lot I was on. So if I actually close out of everything, come back into it, it'll load me back on whatever the last plant, last mix design, last lot I was on. So in mix designs, when a mix design gets approved, we're actually assigning a DOT sequence number that looks in this format. This first 5 digits are actually the last 5 of the plant, and then there will just be a sequential counter. So let's create a mix design real quick, and we'll show you how to go through. So again, custom name for the mix design. This is basically what they're calling it at the plant. You see my specs filter based on what's an active spec. All of the ADT, all this information is what's typical for the mix design. So in the new specs, they actually have triggers based on ADT. So we're setting the mix design up where it requires an ADT input to essentially decide if it's either a low ADT or high ADT mix. So when I save, it actually throws me into the, you see there's now a third submenu, and it throws me into the header page. Now if I go back to the mix design manager, you'll see now I have this new mix design. So clicking on it will again load me straight into the page. The header info is allowed to be updated until the mix design is approved. So as we go through this, everything that's editable on the mix design, once a mix design is submitted for approval, it completely locks it down. One thing you'll notice on every page is there's a remarks. And the remarks will capture the user and a timestamp down to the second. There are a few triggered events throughout mix design and as well as in production. And anytime the event's triggered, it throws a remark in with the user that created the event or triggered the event, as well as a timestamp down to the second. Remarks for mix designs are global across the mix design. So as I click through to the different pages, you'll see that that same remark is held. So every time a new remark gets input, it just adds it onto the stack. All right. So creating mix design. Now again, this is something that we really expect plant users to be doing. But early on, it may fall on some of the DOT users, and as well as when you're playing with the application, you're more than welcome to set yourself up as a plant user and come in and click play. So when I select a material, you see these are only the materials that were set up on the material selection page. So going back to material selection, you see I have course demo 1, course demo 2, fine demo, wrap. Oops, wrong one. And you see it pulls in the values that I had in the plant portion of the stockpile. And again, I'm showing the values that are listed on the AML. So I know this is not a real mix design. I'm just putting in values. Now, when I go to input a wrap, wrap actually has the percent mix total and then the percent AC that's available in the wrap, and then it computes the percent aggregate from the wrap. So as I input this, you'll see my composite row is my weighted averages on percentage, and you'll see it build. Now, because there's so many values, we actually had to break this into two. You'll see that my aggregate info's in the bottom grid and my consensus properties in the top grid. I can click on either row, top or bottom, and it opens the same window. So what do I need here? Another 0.7. So you'll see that anything not meeting spec gets highlighted in the bold and the red. And this is just the design portion. I just added the charts, so check that out. So aggregate design, then they'll do the asphalt design. When they go to input asphalts, they can actually select up to 3 binders. And that is because during production, you can swap binder without having to redesign the mix. It just requires an LWT and SCB. So we're allowing them to select up to 3 binders that they typically use at their plant. And there's a note there that the top binder is the one that's used in design. So punch in mani strip. If they got a warm mix.
I'm going to show them some errors too.
Huh? Oh yeah. So you can see it again, outputs in a row format, doing design GMM. Now, one thing to make note of, if I mistype, you'll get an error notification, and this error notification, we tried to set it up where it shows you the range of the value, but it also shows you the allowable decimal format of the value. So if I tried to enter 2 decimal points for this one, it's not going to allow it. But going back to 1 decimal point, it does allow it. So anytime you see the numerical errors pop up like that, it indicates the range and the allowable number of decimals. And we tried to put typical ranges. Basically what that's for is if you mistype a decimal, you know, where you're actually entering 100,000 instead of 10,000, we're trying to capture typical ranges. So if those need to be expanded, we can do that. But from what I've seen from mix designs, that encompasses the majority of what we need. Now, we did at one point try dynamic calculations, but it was really slowing down the page. So what you'll see is after you input your data, there's a calculate option, and that runs all your computations. Anything that's in that green color will essentially be a computation. Now, just to save time, I'm only going to input 1 column for a lot of these, but putting in the multiple columns, it'll run the average, just simple calculations. So when I save that, that value gets cast back to the main page. We tried to show essentially a summary of all the information on the main page, and any user input is done in a pop-up. So, so design points, they'll typically put in 3 different design points. Oop. And once I have my design points in, you see it actually pulls my optimum total AC. I just added my charts yesterday, and they appear to not be working. I think I need to put verification points on first. So once I have my asphalt design, then they move to the asphalt verification. It automatically pulls in the optimal asphalt from the curve. However, if they need to update it, they can. And then I have my verification points. And there's also an input for the in-max bricks. We'll just skip that for now. Let's see if my charts work. Nope. And there's input for the SCB. Right now I'm just capturing the one number. I don't know if they're intending to, we may set it up where they can actually upload the Excel file if that's needed, but I don't know about capturing all the, I don't think it's a very vital property, but that's just me. Moisture susceptibility for LWT, this typical input window, it pulls the gravity from the previous page. We'll just skip this for now. This matches pretty much from the Excel spreadsheet. I do know that I believe it's incidental mixes still require TSR. Optional. So we left the input for TSR. Again, this matches exactly from the Excel spreadsheet. Now look, people are sneaking in comments on me. All right. So once I have my asphalt design done and verification, then we do the aggregate verification. Let's see, do I have some numbers for this? Weight crushed. 29. All right. So this gives me my verification point from the aggregate. They require, I think it's typically 2, so they can punch in a second. I'm just going to do 1 for now. You see this does compute the correction factor. And as well, anything that's falling outside of spec tolerance is highlighted in the red. So that is basically everything for mix design input. The next step, mix design review. This, we just captured all the main points from the previous pages. Again, pulls all the spec info over, shows you all the inputs, the designs, the verification. And down at the bottom, we have the PDF reports. This one was meant to replicate the JMF check sheet. So we have the flag list on it. So anything that's out of spec or out of tolerance on the verification points, we'll show a flag for. And then the other report is meant to replicate the DOTD JMF submittal form. And again, those are in PDF format. If you want to see the remarks at the end of them, you just check that remark option and you get a second page with the remarks.
Beautiful.
Yeah. All right.
Hey,
So
Patrick, I got a question.
what's up?
On the JMF, on the 2 at the bottom, the submittal and the other one,
Yeah.
are they, the design information supposed to be the same, or is it supposed to be different?
Should be the same. Although David was telling me this morning, you noticed that there was something different in them?
Yes, when I put one in this morning, and it was different, and the one in your example right here is different too, I noticed.
Yeah, I'll go through them. The guys in the back that are working on these are not asphalt developers, and when I ask them to just compare numbers off the spreadsheet, they seem to struggle following that as well. So I'm trying to review everything myself, and it's very overwhelming, but I'm going through it piece by piece. So again, anything you see like that, like Kevin has done, he just screenshots it, emails it, and then it gives me something specifically that I can go check. So anything like that, more than welcome. Like I said, I take criticism I take whatever. Send it to me. If it's good, it's bad, let me know. We're looking to build this to accommodate you. So Kevin's been one of my front runners on testing, and he tells me just about every day, hey, you're going to hate me, but I have something else for you. So, again, that's all very well appreciated. Like I said, we're trying to build this. You know, perfection is very difficult to achieve, but we're trying to get close. So once everything's completed on the mix design, on the header option, you see I have a request district approval. And again, I'm still logged in as a plant user. So we are in production, so this is going to fire off some emails. Or it should. So you see that it's now in a pending status, showing that it's been requested, and we put a 30-day expiration on any request. So once it's been requested, now let me swap back to my DOT person. Hey Kevin, have you been getting emails for all these?
Some of them, I don't know if I ever got a JMF approval one yet, but I did get some emails.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to log in as Luana because she has DLE access.
I got an approval here. It just came through. LaPave Mixed Design approval, first request.
Okay. Well, sorry to the O2 crew. Y'all have been my test crew. And
okay.
No matter how many times I explain to the developers that when you click on stuff in production, you're going to start sending emails, they just click away. So
it's fine.
The other districts have been getting a few emails. If you look at mine, I get about 300 a day. So,
yeah, we're getting some too occasionally, up in 05.
One thing as a DLE, you actually have an admin tab, and you'll see you have a couple options here. The list of all users is the thing that I've been using. So if you need to look up someone's ID, you know, if you need to grant plant access or something like that for a plant user, you can actually look up their ID, look up their info, click on them, see what security they have in Site Manager, things like that.
Yeah, I didn't get that one for the approval, so that must only go to the engineers.
Okay, it may only be submitting to the DLE. The other thing you have listed, district emails, you'll see for Luana, she can see the O2 lot. And clicking on this, you can see the DLE user ID. We put in a backup user ID, and then we have an option where you can put in anyone you want to be emailed when something triggers an Asphalt email to a district. And then you can put in anyone you want for the concrete emails to the district. So this allows you to put in your power users. This allows you to put in who's going to be checking, who's going to be inputting things, who's going to be receiving emails from plant users, things like that. So go into your dashboard. You see under the messages. Now, again, O2 has been my test. And because we've done a lot of stuff in the last couple of weeks, you see hers is just packed. But this first one shows mix design request with a pending check. Clicking on this, it takes me to the mix design. And here I'm on the review page. Again, oh, where are my buttons missing for DLE? But clicking under the header page, you see that as a DOT person, there's actually a district check. You also see in the notes that when I submitted under John Victory, it created an event, district approval request for O2, and it also put the note there with a timestamp of when it was done. Now we have the application set up where I believe we have plant techs, or I'm sorry, district techs and district lab supervisors are able to perform the check option. And again, you can see checked and denied. If you check it, then it advances to the next level, and this should email only the district lab engineer because the district lab engineer is going to be the only one that has the district approval option. So once I approve the mix, you see that I now have a validation tab. Also, if I go back to the Mix Design Manager under New Orleans, you see it gets assigned a mix ID. And again, this is the last 5 of the plant, along with just a sequential sequence number. So obviously there was a 2 here, and we removed it. And you see it gets assigned a 2-year expiration. So clicking on this, I can now click back through it. However, anything I click on, you see there's no save button. So I can only view. So once a mix design has been submitted and approved, there's no more editing. It's all locked down, but you can still click through and view things and do whatever you need to do. Also, you see that there's in the remarks, checked option got flagged, as well as the approval got flagged. So everything gets approved, or excuse me, everything gets tracked and time-stamped. So that way when people say, I did this, I didn't do this, well, we show you did or didn't in the system.
Patrick, that's the proposal that's approved right now, correct?
Yes. So when a mix design is in the proposal status, if I go to validation, you see it's assigned a V0. And this V0 is what we're calling the proposal validation. This is, or the initial validation, excuse me. This is the validation targets that are essentially created from the design. Right? So when you're running in validation, you're actually checking against the design. So I know it's a little confusing with the terminology, but basically these are the design targets. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you'll see where that comes into play here in just a sec. So, actually, I need one more thing under Mix Design Manager. Mount New Orleans. So once a mix has been, oh, she's not a plant user. Swap back. So once a mix has been approved, it is then able to be requested for use on any project. So back as a plant user, so you see as a plant user, I now have access to request contract approval. Now this is only going to show the list of contracts that I have contract authority for. So as John Victory, he only has contract authority for this one test project. Now if they need contract authority, we're adding a button here where they can request contract authority because they have to be set up with contract authority in Site Manager. And right now I believe it's Alan Rush that handles all that. So we're going to set up an email button where they can email Alan. But we'll probably have it CC everyone that's involved with Site Manager so that we can get users set up initially. So swapping back. So you see coming in as Kevin now. I have the check option. And again, this follows the same process. But you see Kevin is only a district lab supervisor, so he cannot do the approval. Now, if that's something that needs to change, we can change. But right now we set it up where district techs and lab supervisors can do the check, and then the DLE has to do all the approvals.
Denied shows up in red.
Huh?
If it's denied, it shows up in red.
Okay, David says if it's denied, it shows up in red. So switching back. need a quick switch. Again, you see that the mix design requests and everything's there in the message queue. And all of this should be triggering emails. So right now, District 02 is probably getting spammed with emails.
I'm getting a few.
Yeah, sorry. So again, logging in as the lab engineer, now have the approve option. And once it's been approved, this mix design is now able to be used on this project. Now, we're setting up essentially as a global mix design, so it can be assigned to any number of projects. So all the plant user has to do is just keep requesting projects, and that same mix design can continue to be used on projects. All right, so back to my plant user. So now as a plant user, if I go to the production sub-tab, this will show me a list of all my projects. For DOT, like I said, you may have every project assigned. We added a filter option. You can pop in any portion of either the ID or the description of the contract, and this will filter down. And it's not case specific. You can punch in whatever you need.
Patrick, when this is in production, will it be the plant manager who's going to request use on a certain project?
So the request options on the mix design can only be done by people designated as a plant designer or a plant manager. So if I go to, let's look at Booty. So you see on Booty, I have John Victory as a plant manager, Michael Bittner as a plant designer, and Lexi Verdon as a plant tech. So Lexi can input data, but she cannot submit. She cannot submit requests. However, Michael and John would be able to submit requests because they have designer and manager status. And it's the same in production. Only the manager and designer are able to do the submittals in production. However, anyone they have set up as a plant tech is able to input data for them. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
And I know I'm clicking around a lot because I'm having to switch users. But you see how quickly I can jump between mix designs, how quickly I can jump between projects. So we're also looking at, I believe we're looking at setting up like a recent that'll show like your last X number of projects, last X number of mix designs, because typically you work on the, like 5 of them at a time. So it'll allow you to quickly jump between them. So I'm in production, I'm on this contract. So any existing lots will be shown here. You see I have a couple already set up. But these are with a different mix design. So when I click add new, I can punch in my lot identifier. I think it allows up to 4 characters. The start date, it defaults to the current day. Calendar if you need to change it. Now my plant drop down is only going to show me plants that have mix designs approved for this project. So Kevin, I know that was one of your emails. So I don't think you did the contract approval portion.
No, I did not.
I saw when I was on your profile, even though you were a plant user, you didn't have access to it. So I think we have a security button we need to check on. But I'll look at that. So you see, I have mix designs from these 2 plants. Now, in asphalt, it's typically 1 contract, 1 plant. I know when you move into the concrete side, you're going to start seeing multiple plants under the same contract. So a lot of the functionality that you see for asphalt is actually being built this way because we're handling both asphalt and concrete in the same manner. So as a DOT person, you're not going to see completely different processes for asphalt and concrete. They're going to follow the same workflow. So selecting a plant, and you see my mix designs, shows me the available mix designs that are under that plant. Now you see that I have both the custom name and I have the DOTD mix design ID, and it shows me the validation that's associated with it. So this has the V0 validation associated, so that's going to be the design targets that this is checking against. Also, when I create a lot, or it's going to give me an option to select a different asphalt binder. So if they change binders, they can select. However, if I have a different binder, you're going to see the LWT and SEB options on the header page in the production stage. All right, so this is all my lot header info. Again, this can be updated until one sublot's created. Once the sublot's created, all this gets locked. So if anything gets mistyped, they can correct it. Again, the remarks for production are global. So saving a remark on the header page, if I go to the plant page, you see it all carries over. All right, so as a plant user, why do I not see QC on there? All right, so as a plant user, I have acceptance. The plant users are typically going to be the ones creating the new sublots. Am I correct in this?
Say that again.
I said plant users are ones creating the new sublot, right? All right, Marty's shaking his head, yes. So as a plant user, you see I can input. All right, I have typical values already in here. We'll just select those real quick. Values, if I mistype something. Do I have any values here? No, why did all my typical values not come in? I'm just going to put some numbers in here. All right, when I hit calculate, you see it runs all the computations. It pulls in the correction factor from the current design targets, which is essentially the current validation. Now, one thing you'll notice, the plant user cannot select validation. So when I save that, as a plant user, I can't see QC. Okay. All right, so under the plant, anytime I create a plant sublot, a corresponding roadway sublot gets created. Now, under the plant, you can see all of my sublot values, and then down below is the composite. This is my average for all the sublots. Now, I just punched in numbers. So anything that's out of tolerance, you see it applies my tolerance onto my my current validation targets, which are my design targets. So you see it shows all the ranges. Anything that's out of range gets flagged. Looks like I missed a lot on gradation. Now you also see a partial sublot button. Now Marty was telling me that there's a new case where if they run more than 100 tons a day, that they're required to collect the plant sample. So if they need to collect an additional plant sample and apply it under the same sublot, this partial sublot will actually allow them to, I'm just going to save a blank one. You see that this creates a sequence number under the same sublot. And now my sublot values are actually done on the weighted tonnage for the sublot. But then when I compute the composite, it uses just the sublot values for each sublot. So it's a little confusing. We'll have all the detailed explanation in the user manual, things like that. But most of the time, this is not going to be used. Like I said, the partial sublots are really only in cases where if they need to run across multiple days, a single sublot that requires multiple plant samples. Okay, so going to roadway, you see as a plant person, I only have quality control. And this is basically set up just like the spreadsheet. Ooh, bad density. So once they punch all that in, they can save. There's also a complete option. So once they check complete, why did that not check complete? Why did that not save at all? I'm sorry, folks. I got one guy that it seems like every time he fixes something, he breaks something else. But let me try it under my profile. So you can see as a DOT user, I have every project. If I punch in test here, hit filter, you see it filters down to just the items that have the word test in it somewhere. Must have been that thing Reese just updated yesterday. He did not thoroughly test it.
It's okay, Patrick. We expect a few glitches.
I strive for perfection, I told you. It's not saving the QA one either. Oh, yes.
It looks like it gets, when you hit calculate, the is completed becomes unchecked sometimes. At least that's what it looked like the first time you did it.
Well, it looked like it saved the QA one. Let me see if now that the QA one's in there, if it saves the QC one. It did. Okay. So it looks like QC is requiring QA to be completed first. All right. So you saw as when I was on a plant user that I only saw the QC button. They're only able to enter QC. As a DOT person, you're only going to be able to enter acceptance. Now, once both show complete, then it will reveal the entries of each to both. Does that make sense? So now if I swap back to John Victory, asphalt production. So you see now that this has been completed by both groups, he can see both buttons, but when I click on it, I don't have a save option. That make sense? Now the other is hitting the plus here. It expands it, and it'll show the list of cores underneath. All right, so this is done sublot by sublot. Until the sublot is checked complete by both parties, you're only going to see the portion that you can input, and then once it's checked complete for both parties, then the sublot is locked, and the information is revealed to both parties. All right, which I believe is how our specs are written. So we're just going to do the one sublot for now. Switch back.
Now, Patrick, would there be a way somehow, like, you know, for each of these lots and everything, we're getting in, like, asphalt CDs, would there be a way that they can upload those CDs to this somehow so that we can just grab them rather than trying to, like, sometimes we get them lost, sometimes they email them to us. I mean, is there a way that they could possibly upload and have PDF saved for the asphalt CDs they get in?
We're looking at that through the Pavia application, actually.
Okay, sounds good. We were just kind of wondering that because that's kind of thing that we kind of, I wouldn't say like it's pain up here, but it's just something that like sometimes people lose and everything. And
yeah, that's on the table with the Pavia group. They're looking at ways to capture CD both at the plant and in the field.
Sweet. Thank you.
Let's see. So apparently I just logged in as Amar, but I wanted to show Mix Designs, LaPave. Open. Did it not capture the latest one? Well, again, something that I had working and is not working. But basically, you see it's writing back to Site Manager. So anytime a mix design gets approved, it's going to push it to Site Manager. And I'm working on, when a lot gets completed, it's also going to push a sample back into the 502 template or 501 template in Site Manager as well. So I knew that question was coming. I was just going to handle it real quick. All right, so I'm on Luana. So one thing to note under the plants, DOTD, yeah, they put quality control under DOTD. Okay, so quality control should be under a plant person. DOTD verification will be under DOTD. So you see it's going to match the corresponding sublots that are created by the plant user. And because the sublot's locked, I can't do an input on it. So I need to create another. All right. This is where it gets easier just to do it under my profile instead of swap. I wear too many hats. All right, so under DOTD verification, there'll be a partial sublot entry. And in this case, instead of pulling the correction factor, you're actually able to input your local correction factor. The other thing as a DOTD person is under the acceptance, for any sublot, you're able to check validation. And when you check and save, or actually when you check validation, it then unlocks all of the inputs. So if I was to add a sublot, back to Luana. production. Now, normally this will save the last project you run, but because I'm actually flipping profiles, it clears the profile every time, so that's why mine keeps clear. But you see how it's locked for DOT users, so I can't input as Luana. If I check for validation, then I can input, because DOTDs typically input. DOTDs typically input the validation for the plant, or it's typically run together, and we have it where if you want the plant to input it, they can input it, and then you can check validation, and it takes over. Or if you want to input it yourself, you can just check validation and input it yourself.
And it always allows either, you don't have to enter all the fields, you can save it partially complete, and even with wrong numbers.
Yes. Punch in some stuff real quick. All right, and actually, if you need to go back and again, this one's already completed, but if you need to, if we don't have the save for validation, okay, we'll do that. So if you want to take a completed one and save it for validation, we'll have this set up where you can do that. So go into roadway. Again, you see I'm under a plant user. So for the first sublot, because it's completed by both parties, I can see either, but I can't save. For the second one, I have the acceptance input, so I can punch in. Let's put in another mainline core. Now you see down at the bottom, I have a mainline mix use, so I require at least 3 cores. So we have flags, we have things to check. That's the same as in here. If I have a minor mix use, see, I need at least 1 minor mix use for the sublot. So we tried to capture everything we could from the spec, make flags, make reminders, make checks. Why did that clear the top one? Oh my gosh. All right. So I do apologize for the production stuff. Like I said, the guys have been updating a few things, and they're notorious for when they update things, they break other things.
I got a quick question, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
We run a Rice gravity 1 per lot. Is that any way that you can put that on there, or is it just going to be roadways for density?
Well, you don't use a Rice gravity for.
No, but when they do the roadways, once it's complete, they
Break
it down.
I'm getting that.
My bad. Sorry.
You jumping ahead, Kevin.
Sorry.
All right, so I'm going to leave myself logged in because I'm in admin mode, so I can kind of do all the roles at one time instead of having to jump around. One thing I forgot to mention early on, this screen's dynamic, so depending on your resolution, depending on how big you want the window, you see it wraps and shrinks and does stuff to accommodate. So once all of my sublots are in a complete status, the district lab engineer will have the close lot option, and get ready for some more emails. So when the district lab engineer closes the lot, I can punch in any remarks they need, hit save. You see it creates the close option, or excuse me, it shows a close remark, timestamped. And for the 2018 spec, they're allowed to do a GMB dispute, the new spec that's coming out. So that starts the 24-hour countdown. And that should email the plant users, which I guess Lexi and Michael may be getting spam with emails as well. So that starts the GMB dispute, the window. So as a plant user, they'll see the dispute or the dispute. And when they dispute, they can select which sublot they want to dispute, save it, and you see that shows the GMB dispute. And that'll actually shoot an email to the IA group. And when the IA group gets the email, they'll have a link that comes into the production lot. And you see, because I disputed the first sublot, I now have a resolution input for the first sublot. Again, it's the exact same window. They get to punch in all their fund values. Calculate, and then they can say either use the resolution values, or if they don't have that check, then it just uses the DOTD values. And again, we're spelling all this out in a very longhand in the user manual, as well as breaking this down into multiple micro videos. So once they've input their resolution, you'll actually see when I expand the drop down, I now have acceptance, QC, and resolution. And then they resolve the lot. So once it's been resolved, either when it gets resolved or when the GMB window closes for the dispute, you see now I have my GMM verification at the bottom. This is what you're looking for, Kevin?
Yes.
So when you go to input, you select which sublot you're breaking down, which core you're breaking down, punch in your values. If you fall outside the 0.02, then it's going to force you to input one for every sublot. Let me put you out there. When I calculate, computes the average. If that's still outside the 0.0, is it 0.024?
Yes.
Then you see it's going to show, it's going to use the average GMM verification instead of the plant values. So on my GMM, they're all going to get swapped to the average GMM verification. And it's going to recompute density. So you see my density has changed now. All right, and once the GMM verification has been input as a DLE, you will now see the complete lot option. And when you complete the lot, again, you can punch in a remark. That's going to start the GMM dispute, and that's in both the current 2016 spec and the new spec. So they'll have 24 hours to dispute that if they want to dispute that. So we're going to go ahead and dispute it. And once we do the dispute, there's now a GMM resolution input where the IA lab can input their values. We're just going to do zeros. And then when they go to resolve the GMM, they can say either use DOT values or not, punch in their remarks, hit save, and you see that my GMM resolution is now complete. So this stack is kind of my phase that my production lot is in. And depending on what user hat I'm wearing, depends on what buttons I'll see, what options I can input, and things like that. So the majority of it's done by the DLE. And again, if that's something that needs to be revamped, just let me know, because it's just a matter of altering some security stuff. So what you'll see, every one of those events that I clicked, the close lot, dispute, the resolve, the complete lot, dispute, resolve, All of it gets time stamped with a user ID. On the roadway report, now we're going to pull all the lot and station information and everything else from the roadway report. Excuse me. They're actually working on building this form into the Pavia application, which is the iPads out in the field. So a lot of the roadway report will be completed there, and we're going to end up pulling in all that information into our roadway report. And then you see the core information gets added with it. And this will give you one sheet per sublot. This is pulling both QC and QA. This should just be the QA cores. All right, another note for me. Also on the plant side, there's a plant report as well. And this just kicks out the plant report with the sublot info. And someone is rounding the whole numbers here. And that's basically it for the roadway. I'm working on a lot, or a project consolidated report that'll show all the lot info and, or excuse me, all of the project info in one spot. I'm also working on some meta reports for mix designs that'll show you all the mix design info, even if they're used across multiple projects. We need to figure out what inputs we need for the IRI page. The only other thing, and this is really going to fall on the plant groups, contractor groups, is we added a spot for the non-destructive testing where they can punch in their density readings. And I just got last week the form from Sammy Cooper. So we're actually looking at building that into a Pavia form where they can input it through there. Now I am working, I keep saying the Pavia group or Pavia group, however you want to pronounce it. They're the group that's, I know a lot of you saw the iPads, especially at the DLE meeting, that are being used out in the field. So we're looking at ways to pass information between their group, site manager, and LaPave so that essentially it'll all look like one unified application. It'll just have a different interface depending on what type of user you are. All right, so that kind of wraps up. Oh, wait, got one more thing. So yeah, I got two more things. So if I go back to my mix design and on the validation tab, as a lab engineer, you have the option to edit the validation. So if I want to edit targets, I know Luana said there's a couple cases where you may just need to change a single point in the gradation. I also had a case where I think it was Diamond B. They have one guy that does all their mix designs, and then each plant develops their own local calibration factor, or excuse me, correction factor for their oven. So you may just need to come in and update the correction factor. So if that's the case, why are these pulling 0? Let me look at that. If that's the case, you can just update the single value. So let's say they're minus 1.5, minus 0.15. Save. You see that it creates now a version 1 for the validation. And then you can either approve or expire the validation. So if I approve this, you'll see it gets timestamped to remark the approval of the new validation. The other option is you can do a new validation from sublots. So I only check that one sublot, but if I have multiples, I can check multiples. And if I have multiples, you'll see, let's see if I can pull one up. Which one was he inputting? Nope. So I don't have an example in production. I'll make one. But basically, if I have multiples, you'll see the average, the standard deviation, and the PWL for the validation lot. And you'll see the last 10 validation sublots will be shown here. So you can select up to 5. And then once you approve the validation, what it will do is it will actually expire the previous. So you see the previous one got expired. One before that's expired. So it expires the previous validation, and it sets the new one for a span of 2 years. So what this will allow you to do is validate on ongoing production data. So as we maintain this concept of global mix designs, if all they need to do is revalidate to maintain the mix design, you can just validate off ongoing production data by going to the production tab, opening up the sublot you want, selecting the validation, saving it, and then coming back here and doing validation. Doing this way, it allows you to select validation across multiple projects. So if they validate across multiple projects, you can handle it that way as well. So when I go back into production and go to add a new one, you'll see that I have the same mix design, but it shows I have each validation. So if I actually update the date, to tomorrow, I'm only going to have the one because it's the only one that's active tomorrow. But because the other ones were expired today, if I still need to close something out today, I can still select them. If I backdate this, it'll backdate validations with it to whatever the active validation was during that time range. So if for whatever reason they don't punch in the lot info until a week after they've, you've updated the validation, something like that, you can backdate and go in and punch in under a previous validation. All right, so that covers validation. The last thing on the list is the help request, which I've shown several other places. This pulls your user info, pulls your email. You got a list of options here. We'll end up adding some more for LaPave. You can punch in sample ID, contract ID. Eventually, we're going to have these where they automatically pull. And send me a help request. And as an admin, we have this message queue where I'll get all of your help requests. And David actually just set up an email system that spams me once a day to let me know when I have items waiting. So if you don't hear back from me within 24 hours, you just assume I'm gone.
If you need him sooner, call him.
Or David. Well, why did that not pull any of the info in, David? That's working for that one. Weird. All right. So that basically covers everything for asphalt. Like I said, concrete's coming along, but the workflow is going to be pretty much the same. Any questions, concerns, comments?
I got a question. When you go to print, like off the JMF submittal and the check,
Yeah.
it cuts part of the page out. Is that something on my end?
There should be a fit to page option. I know that, let's see, I think one of these we formatted for an 8x11 page. And he was supposed to have done the other one.
Like when I choose PDF page size, it cuts it instead of cutting it long ways. It shrinks it like when you print it to fit the page, it cuts the top off, like the mix ID part off, and the JM SuperPay foam off. And then when you put it to choose to fit the PDF size, it cuts your percentages off on your retained on the 8.
Okay.
At least for me.
I'll take a look, see if we can find something more generic for all printers. It looks like the margins on this are rather small. So I'll see
It was on both too, the submittal and the check.
Okay. I'll take a look.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think you covered this, but when they change their specific gravities, we can go into the mix and change that number and just recalculate everything by checking the validation block. Is that right?
Right now, you can do it through just the validation if you know what your new target is. Like if their stockpiles are changing and you're wanting to read mix, we're actually working on a clone mix option where essentially they'll just copy the existing mix design, update their stockpile information in the mix design, and then resubmit it.
Perfect.
And
okay.
Looking at a way where it'll already have all the previous contracts tied to it, and essentially it'll just take over the previous mix design and expire the previous.
But it won't go backwards and recalculate anything that you've already done, right?
Well, we're wanting to retain all the previous information so that if you need to backdate anything, it'll still use the values that were valid during the date ranges.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
All right. So, like I said, this is live. This is out there for the DLE users. If you need to set up anyone on your dashboard, you'll see a plant management tab. And let's see, let's say Luana wanted to set up for Barrier Boutique, grant plan access. What's Natalia's ID?
27 56 55.
0027, what?
56 55.
There you go. And you just assign her whatever role. So if we do plant manager and approve. So you see Natalia's now in here as a plant manager. So starting out, DLEs, you may want to go in and assign a couple of your technicians to just some plants so that they can play around. I do have the same webinar again this afternoon, except I'm doing it with all of the plant personnel. I thought my room was only 50 big, so I had to break it into 2 webinars. So we're going to be going through all the same stuff. So you may start getting requests from some of the plant users. I do know that the Prairie Group, Barry Nunez, said he had a couple small projects starting. He was wanting to try and use this to submit for the small projects. So Shawanda and Laura, y'all may have a couple coming your way.
Okay.
It's out. It's live. Like I said, it's not policy yet, but getting in, clicking around, playing with it, understanding it. Like I said, we're recording this, so we're going to post this video online, as well as LTRC is working on making some smaller micro tutorials. Again, I'm planning on setting up some dates to come out to each district and basically walk through hands-on LaPave if you need me to. We're probably also going to bring a couple other things to show as far as the Pavia stuff and the new barcode scanning and all that setup.
Okay.
Hey, Patrick,
Bam.
what's the status on the PE's printers?
I believe Brian submitted an order for 50 of them, and it had to go through OTS. And since it's in OTS, I don't know if we can get a timeline or not.
We expect snow before it happens.
But he did put the request is in, the request is signed through DOTD, and it's in OTS now. So we try to pass them at least once a week.
Thank you. I mean, it's bad if we gotta print it for them and then scan it.
Yeah, I mean, they can always print it on just a straight piece of paper. But we're pushing as hard as we can. We're trying to get all the stuff in place.
Thank you.
And you're not the only one. I've gotten emails from a couple other districts. When do I get my printers? Everyone's waiting on them. All right. Well, any other questions, concerns? So on that note, like I said, I'll be setting up a schedule to come visit.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
If you hit any issues, just use the snipping tool in Windows, screen capture, and send it to me.
We do have a GoFundMe page that you could donate if you really like it.
We'd like it, so open that page. We'll see.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
The money back page.
Hey, man.